Mr. Chairman, I believe it's 2 o'clock and we have a quorum, so I'm ready when you are.
Okay, very good. So, good afternoon. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is hereby called to order for its regularly scheduled meeting of April 22nd. My name is Tim Rainey. I'm chairman of the board. Mr. Josh Whitehead serves as secretary of the board. Mr. Whitehead, may I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Doss.
Present.
Vice Chair Savage Towns.
Present.
Ms. Baker.
Here.
Mr. Claybrook.
Present. I'm ready.
Mr. Jackson.
Very good. So, good afternoon.
Mr. Jackson. Okay. Ms. Scurlock.
Present.
And Mr. Chairman.
Here.
Oh, wait, Mr. Chairman, I see our seventh person. Mr. Malazri.
Here.
Got you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is the oldest appointed governmental body in Memphis and Shelby County. We were established in 1925. The Board of Adjustment hears appeals from the administration of the zoning ordinance, requests for variances from the zoning ordinance, and other requests articulated by local zoning laws adopted pursuant to the enabling legislation. The 8 members of the board are appointed, 4 by the mayor of Memphis and 4 by the mayor of Shelby County, with confirmation by the Memphis City Council or Shelby County Board of Commissioners. We serve without remuneration. At this time, I would like to swear in the staff. So if you'll raise your hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you. May I get a motion from the board to approve the meeting, the minutes from last month's meeting?
So moved. So moved.
Okay, being moved, and there's a second. All those in favor of approving last month's meeting signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Mr. Secretary, could you please provide a secretary's report if we have one this month, and then explain the procedure for this month's meeting?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Under the category of Secretary's Report, I'm going to take a short moment to instruct the viewers on how they can not only participate in this phone call, but also view some of the visuals that will be referenced during the meeting. We explored several different platforms to conduct this conference call. We decided to use this platform, which, by the way, is Skype for Business, but through the conference call mechanism of Skype for Business to enable those with limited access or no access in the community to the internet an opportunity to participate. There are 2 ways, however, if you do have the internet, to view the visuals that we will discuss during this meeting. Ms. Smith will be presenting our cases on behalf of the Office of Planning and Development. She will be referencing both the staff reports and the one-page PowerPoints. Those one-page PowerPoints are streamed live, a slight 30-second delay on memphistn.gov. When you go to memphistn.gov, you can go to the Government tab at the bottom, then scroll over to the bottom right. There's a a button for Watch Public Meetings, and then you go to Upcoming Events. The second way to view the visuals is through the Shelby County's website. The Board of Adjustment is a joint city-county board, so we have access to both websites. The county's website is shelbycountytn.gov. When you do that, there's a search bar. This is probably the easiest way to get to the document you're looking for. You search for Board of Adjustment, you get to the board's homepage, and then you go to the most recent agenda. From the agenda, which is on the city's website as well, you can download each staff report as we go over them. Again, there's a 30-second delay on the live stream, quote-unquote stream on the city's website. So if you are viewing that, whether you're a board member or a participant, make sure you mute your computer because that 30-second delay may be somewhat distracting. We are trying to balance several interests through this teleconference, the interests of the applicants and the petitioners who have filed applications with our office, but also we want public participation. By law, these are public hearings that require verbal and/or written testimony. So we feel like we have found a good balance between those two interests. With that said, however, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, if a board member feels like something is missing that would assist that board member from making a final determination that would be better, a live in-person forum would be a better approach, then I would recommend that that board member make a motion to hold for 1 month. We vote on that motion, and then we either hold it for a month or the motion fails and we proceed, and we would just take it month to month. I don't know anything more than anyone else on how long this teleconference world will last. So if we do take that approach, we'll just go month to month. This last point goes to my statement that I usually give at the end of the Secretary's report, but we did mail notices for this meeting. We mailed over 1,200 notices. For better or for worse, mailed notice is the only way we can guarantee that adjacent property owners are notified of this meeting, and we did do that, and I confirmed moments ago that the returned envelopes on those cases do not exceed, nor, quite frankly, come close to the 25% threshold that the zoning code claims is false notice and requires renotice. So with Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll proceed to our regular procedures. I will call out each case as listed on the agenda. Again, the agenda is on the city and the county's website. With that, I will hand the floor over to you, Mr. Chairman. You will ask if the applicant is present. All the cases that will proceed for a public hearing, with the exception of maybe one, will have opposition. So then at that point, we'll go to Ms. Smith, the staff planner for the Office of Planning and Development, who give her presentation. We'll go to the applicant for a total of 10 minutes, then to the opposition, which has a cumulative amount of 10 minutes to present their testimony, and then followed by a 2-minute rebuttal by the applicant. If the applicant chooses to not utilize his or her entire 10 minutes at the beginning of the hearing and wants to save it for rebuttal, that of course is permissible. These times do not include Q&A between members of the audience and the board. We will stop the clock. I believe that Vice Chair Savage Towns will be keeping our clock for us this afternoon. So she will stop the clock whenever there is a question of the members of the audience. At the conclusion of those times for testimony, applicant, supporters, opposition, rebuttal, the board will close the public hearing and deliberate on the matter. After the board closes the public hearing, if an additional question is needed of a member of the audience, a 2/3 vote is required by the board to reopen the public hearing, at which point both sides are given an equal amount of time to provide additional testimony. The body may approve or reject or hold a case for a period not exceeding 90 days with the consent of the applicant. All section numbers that we refer to this afternoon come from the Memphis and Shelby County Unified Development Code. I will introduce the entire UDC to make it part of today's record, thus dispensing with the reading of individual sections. This body is vested with the power to act on these cases before us under the provisions of Chapter 922 and 924 of the UDC. Mr. Chairman, as stated before, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all other notice requirements have been fulfilled as required by the code.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, the board will establish a consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the Secretary will call out each eligible case. If any member of the audience, staff, board member objects to the case being placed on consent, he or she should do so by a show of hands when the secretary reads that case. Once the consent agenda is established, the board will vote on all cases placed on the consent agenda as a whole and will not hold individual public hearings on each case. Mr. Secretary, which items today are eligible to be placed on consent?
Mr. Chairman, to reiterate what you said, but also to clarify, our public notice that was mailed to neighbors did require that they show their hands, quote unquote, by yesterday.
Correct.
So we have our opposers in the queue. So, but as I go over this, if any member of the board wishes a public hearing on one of these cases I enumerate, just get my attention verbally. So, again, the consent calendar is established at the beginning of each meeting. These cases will be voted in whole. These cases represent those items where the applicant is in agreement with all of our conditions and there has been no opposition presented. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we start with agenda item number 2. That's docket BOA 2010, located at 2242 St. Paul Road. The applicant is Paul Brassfield. The use district is the Conservation Agricultural District, and the request is a variance from subsection 361 to allow a 16-foot side yard encroachment for an attached garage. Item number 4, docket BOA 2020, located at 7124 Winchester. The applicant is Octopharma Plasma Incorporated. The use district is the CA district overlaid with a PD 97311, which is also overlaid with a CP, Commercial Planned Development District. And the request is a conditional use permit for a blood plasma donation center. That brings us to agenda item number 5. Mr. Chairman, I should probably have explained this earlier, but the consent agenda can either represent approvals, which is the case with the previous 2 cases I just enumerated, but also holds, and those are indicated on the agenda. So agenda item number 5 falls under the latter category. This is docket BOA 2021, located at 4212 Elvis Presley. The applicant, again, is Octopharma Plasma Incorporated. The use district is the CMU3 district, and the request is a conditional use permit for a blood plasma donation center. On this item, the applicant is requesting a 1-month hold to reconfigure the site plan. Agenda item number 6, that is docket BOA 2022, located at 687 Melrose Street. The applicant is Jamie Russell Bell. The use district is the RU2 multifamily district in the Central Gardens Historic Overlay, and the request is from item 273B1B to allow an accessory dwelling unit on a lot that does not meet the requirement for such units. Agenda item number 7, that's docket BOA 2023, located at 1609 to 1613 Monroe Avenue. The applicant is Union Avalon Partners, LLC. The use district is the RU4 multifamily district within the Midtown Overlay, and the request is a use variance from section 252 to allow the continuation and legitimization of a commercial parking lot. Agenda item number 8, that is docket BOA 2024, located at 3209 Poplar Avenue, East High School. The applicant is the Shelby County School Board. The use district is the R6 Residential Single Family District, and the request is a variance from paragraph 272A4 to allow an accessory structure to extend forward of the front building. Agenda item number 9, docket BOA 2025, located at 680 South Perkins. The applicant is Lindsay Martins. The use district is the Single Family R15 zoning district, and the OG district pursuant to a plan development, PD 09314, and the request is a variance from 497B1 to allow a pole sign exceeding the R15 sign regulations. Agenda item number 10, that's docket BOA 2026 at the northwest corner of Poplar and Kenilworth / Tucker. The applicant is Memphis Zoological Gardens. The use district is the CMU3, the RU3, the R6, and the Midtown overlay, as well as the Evergreen historic overlay, with the request being a variance from subsection 498A to allow an off-premise sign on a lot with a principal use that is located 300 feet away. Agenda item number 11, that's docket BOA 2027, located at 6109 Pleasant Ridge Road. The applicants are Kenneth and Pamela Poussin. The use district is CA Conservation Agricultural, and the requests are variances from subsection 271A, E, and H, as well as 2710A to allow an accessory structure and recreational vehicle as a dwelling unit, and that those be on a lot without the required 48-foot lot width. Agenda item number 12, which is docket BOA 2028, located at 6015 Park Avenue. The applicant is Courtyard by Marriott. The use district is a planned development that references an OG district, and similar to an earlier docket number, the request is a variance to permit a sign that exceeds that would otherwise be allowed. Agenda item number 13 is docket BOA 2029, located at 1383 Boxwood. That's Summerfield Missionary Baptist Church. The use district is the R6 district, and the request is a variance from 362A to allow a reduction of a 20-foot rear setback and a reduction of, a reduction of the rear setback. That brings us to agenda item number 14, which is docket BOA 2030, located at 3619 Kearney. The applicant is WOSFR LLC, represented by Cameron Ellis. The use district is the R6 Residential Single Family District, and the request is a variance from section 361 to allow a reduction of minimum lot width and lot size requirements.
Mr. Whitehead,
Yes, ma'am.
Mary Baker. This item number 14, I don't plan to vote against it, but I would like to make comments on this item for the record.
Okay.
However, you handle.
Why don't we pull it off consent? We may not have a full public hearing, but that would give you an opportunity to make those comments.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Number 15, Mr. Chairman, we are recommending rejection, so that'll be on the regular agenda, which brings us to our final case. That is agenda item number 16, docket BOA 2033, located at 1277 Lock Cuba Road. The applicant is Joseph Friscillo. The use district is the CA Conservation Agricultural District, and the request is a conditional use permit to allow a mobile home structure and a variance to allow two principal structures, as there's already a single-family house on this property. So with that, Mr. Chairman, all of the cases that I just mentioned will be on the consent agenda, which leaves, maybe that's the easier way to put this, that leaves us with having public hearings on agenda items 1, 3, maybe abbreviated public hearing on 14, and a full public hearing on 15.
Okay.
Mr. Whitehead, this is Madeline. I would like to, and like I said, just a brief, there's summary or whatever on agenda item number 7.
Okay. So we'll pull that off consent?
Got it.
Yes, sir, if we don't mind.
Got you. So with the exception of those 5.
Thank you, Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, I would see if a member of the board would offer us a motion to approve agenda item number 2, 4, 5 as a hold, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 16.
So moved.
So moved. Okay, is there a second? Okay, being moved and seconded, I want to remind each of the board members by voting on the consent agenda, he or she affirms that he has read the staff report and is in full agreement with the conditions. Mr. Secretary, may I get a roll call, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Malazri?
Yes.
Ms. Skurlock?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Ms. Doss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Downs.
Yes, I find the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met. It will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
7 ayes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Secretary. So if you were on the call for any of those cases, and probably better put, if you're on the call for any case other than 1, 3, 7, 14, and 15, then you have been approved, and you can get off the call or stay and listen with us. Mr. Secretary, will you call our first case that we're going to hear today?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is a case to be reheard, and just to explain it to the board and to the audience, the way we do these rehearings is the burden is on the applicant during the initial hearing to prove his or her hardship or practical difficulty. Then once the body approves that, if a rehearing is petitioned, the petitioner, the burden is now on the petitioner, and we list the petitioner on the caption for that agenda item. As we know, as we recall, on February 26th, 2020, there was a petition on this case, and the board did approve that petition. So now the burden is back on the applicant to show his or her evidence, findings of fact of a hardship or practical difficulty, which is why we have styled the caption thusly. Docket BOA 19132, located at 235 West Shelby. The applicant is Cathedral of Praise Ministries. The use district is the R6 Residential Single Family District. The variance is from subsection 362A to permit the encroachment of an existing church building into its rear setback, as well as a variance from paragraph 262G3 to permit off-site parking, as well as a variance from 262G5 to allow a Class 2 buffer along residential property lines.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I do have a quick question for you. The record from those prior meetings is still part of our record, so the applicant doesn't have to necessarily restate everything, do they?
That is correct.
Okay, just wanted to be sure. Well, why don't we at this time, if the staff presenter will give us maybe just, we've heard this at least twice, if not 3 times, parts of it. If he can give us just a 30-second overview, and then we'll move to testimony.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Summer Smith with the Office of Planning and Development. So this is a rehearing for BOA 132. It's for Cathedral Praise Ministries. The first hearing was approved with conditions. Since that time, the site plan has been updated to reflect conditions 1 and 2. So the current site plan is up to date. Churches are permitted by right in all residential districts, so this case is just dealing with allowing the use of an existing building on a lot as well as off-site parking. So the lot will encroach into the rear setback by around 16 feet. The off-site parking is going to be in a parcel to the rear of the church, and there's a 10-foot alley that separates the existing church building from the parcel being proposed for parking. And there will be a 6-foot site-proof wooden fence along the western property line instead of the required Class 3 buffer. Staff feels that'll be adequate. And in addition, staff has added the condition that the board added at the last meeting regarding the presence of a parking attendant during Sunday services and special events. It's been added on page 15 of the staff report, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Are there any questions for Ms. Smith before we move to our testimony? All right, hearing none, I'm going to assume the applicant is on the line and can hear us. Are you there, Mr. Applicant? Is the applicant with us now?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Okay, if you can give your name and address for the record for us.
This is Kenny Jones and Coretta Jones at 5188 Sunny Autumn Lane, Memphis, Tennessee 38125.
Okay, to refresh my, and are you the pastor and the pastors, and both pastors there, the husband and wife?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Now, I'm going to swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the true self you got?
I do affirm.
I affirm.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, so what we're going to do is you can add to the staff report now. You can reserve your time for rebuttal. You basically have 10 minutes to present your case and then up to 2 minutes to rebut with whatever time that you might reserve. So I'll leave it up to you if you want to talk more now or talk more after you hear from the opposition on this.
We reserve.
Okay, so you'll reserve the full 12 minutes for rebuttal. And so, and there's no one else that's here to speak in favor of this, correct?
Correct.
Okay, then we'll move to the opposition. Is our opposition now on the line and able to speak to us?
Okay, we have unmuted Ms. Debbie Kemp.
Okay, Ms. Kemp, how are you doing?
Doing fine.
Okay, if you can give your name and address for the record for me.
My name is Debbie Kemp, 243 West Shelby Drive,
Okay.
Memphis, Tennessee. You should be a Carlos. Is Carlos on here?
Mr. Whitehead, do we have Mr. Ortiz?
If Ms. Kemp would like him to go first, we can flip it over to him. Okay.
He's going to take
Would that? Okay, very good. Thank you, Ms. Kemp.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Kemp. Mr. Chairman, my name is Carlos Ortiz, and I'm representing Ms. Kemp on this matter.
Can you give me your address for the record?
Yes, 2783 Ketchum Road, number 3, Memphis, Tennessee, 38114.
Perfect. And then do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, esteemed members of the board, I'm given the constraint of time, I'm going to jump right into it. This petition or this request for variance came before the board a while back, and in doing so, there were a number of deficiencies that we identified in reviewing the application, and I'm not going to get into all the details of what we actually found originally, as it's already been discussed in previous meetings. One of the deficiencies that we found are encompassed in 3 major sections: off-site parking, building site, and multiple uses. Under off-site parking, there's a conditional use permit requirement under the UDC under section 2.5.2 because off-site parking is already a permitted use, so the applicant erroneously requested a variance for off-site parking for a use to have off-site parking which is already approved by the UDC, but a conditional use permit is required. That conditional use permit was never filed with the board or with the Office of Planning and Development. There is a issue with the disabled parking on this property as well, where the disabled parking was placed off-site. No variance was requested for that off-site parking of disabled parking, which is expressly prohibited by the UDC under paragraph 4.5.4B3B. And it is further prohibited by the ADA subchapter 3, the Americans with Disabilities Act. There's also a issue with the parking ratios, where the petitioner on January 22nd testified under oath that the intended capacity of this church would be 300 people. Therefore, a requirement of 1 parking spot for every 10 seats, requiring 30 parking spaces is required, where the current site plan only shows 27, 2 of which are disabled parking, and those disabled parking and the regular parking are all on the off-site parking, which I already mentioned is prohibited for the disabled parking. The principal use is also because this property or this application is dealing with 2 sites, 2 separate sites. One is for the church, which was already existing. The other one is for an off-site parking, which is new to the application. Both of those are considered principal uses under the UDC under subsection 3.6.2a. And under those, specifically, it requires that it has certain setbacks and the track and lot has to be a certain area and width on the front. The square footage is under the UDC is 20,000 square feet. The current area of the off-site parking is only 13,355 square feet. Further, the frontage of the property is supposed to be 100 feet. The frontage of that property itself, which faces Chisholm and has an address of Chisholm, is only 80 feet. Under the UDC, there is a separate and equal classification and treatment. The respondent failed to satisfy and fails to enforce the UDC, more specifically paragraph 2.5.1C1, which states in relevant part that, one, when the principal uses of a development falls within different use categories, each principal use shall be classified or treated individually, and each use shall be subject to all applicable regulations for that use. Also, because it doesn't meet the requirements for the size of the lot, there should have been a use variance filed with this application. It was not. The use variance definition under subsection 12.3.1U and states the relevant part that is for the purposes prohibited by this development code as distinguished from a variance in lot area, yard size, building height, or other dimensional bulk requirements. And both of those are missed from the square footage and the width. Also, there is a question about, or not a question, there is a requirement on this specific property for the State Road and Highway curb cut. And that curb cut is expressly governed by the Tennessee Department of Transportation, which requires that a two-way driveway has a minimum width of 24 feet. The site plan proposes one of 20 feet, which is in violation of the Tennessee Department of Transportation guidelines. It also requires that there be a traffic impact study this is under the highway entrance permit section of the Tennessee Department of Transportation guidelines. There should be a traffic impact study. There should be a traffic control plan, a site plan submitted, and an application form filled by the applicant submitted to the Tennessee Department of Transportation. None of which there's evidence at this time, at least the one that we've been abreast to, that those things have been met. And I would say further that it is a Class B misdemeanor to begin construction or to do any of these things in violation of these regulations, according to TCA Section 54-5-301. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I would state that the U.S. Supreme Court has overturned 236 of its own rulings. This board is no different. Justice Clarence Thomas says that the court, in this case the board, should not uphold precedent that are demonstrably erroneous, regardless of whether other factors support letting them stand. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, I think that this case should be reviewed de novo. A lot of information that we are not being able to get to on 10 minutes, but as we have demonstrated, there are a large quantity of deficiencies with this application. I believe that there are errors that the board should carefully consider it, more specifically the one requiring the disabled parking to be on the same property as the church, because it violates federal law. And in doing so, the church itself under the ADA cannot be sued, but the city can. Therefore, any decision made by the board opens the city to liability under the ADA. And as a disabled veteran, I can attest that this plan, as it is, would violate the ADA, and it would be something that I would personally find as an encroachment into my rights as a disabled person, as it is proposed right now. Furthermore, there are some there were some questions as to whether or not this lot would be subject to the UDC in 2011. I would submit that there are public record documents from the Register of Shelby County Register showing that this property, while it was originally developed in 1911 for residential use, this property was purchased by the petitioner somewhere around August 7th of 2019. Therefore, making it subject to the 2011 UDC provisions. And I will finally submit that it is not the board's job to rectify the lack of due diligence by the purchaser of the property. That due diligence should have been made originally by the purchaser to see that they could actually, in fact, do the things that they were trying to accommodate in this property. And it should not be that we throw out all of the provisions, because that's what it would require, Mr. Chairman. It would require that the UDC and all of its provisions for the development of a church or a place of worship within a residential R6 district be thrown out in order to accommodate the church being placed there. I understand that we typically try to accommodate the property owners so they can utilize their property, but it should not be at the detriment of the public, of the city, and it certainly should not be done because of lack of due diligence to begin with on the requirements that it would
30 seconds remaining.
be met for this property to be developed. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I would return whatever balance of my time to you, and if there's any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. I will say you did a great job of using almost every second of that 10 minutes. Yeah, you must have practiced. So good job there. So are there any questions at this point for Mr. Ortiz? I don't hear any questions from the board for Mr. Ortiz. I do have a couple questions of staff on this. Would the staff like to respond to any of his statements on the whether the proper variances are being done and possibly the Tennessee right-of-way access and misdemeanor?
I can speak to the conditional use permit.
Okay.
In section, this is Summer Smith, by the way, 2.6.2G, which is, it's going to be our use standards for uses. It says that this is for places of worship, and this is number 3 in that subsection. All parking shall be located on the same site as or a contiguous site, meaning that it touches a part of the site the church is on, or a contiguous site to the site on which a place of worship is located or in a district that allows commercial parking as a principal use. A conditional use permit shall be required for all off-site parking for places of worship for parking not located on the same site as or a contiguous site to the site on which the place of worship is located. So since this is a contiguous site, a conditional use permit is not required.
Can you?
So,
Ms. Ortiz, you can't rebut like that. Don't interrupt. Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
So I can speak to that. I can't speak to the curb cut process, but that's generally something that's addressed with engineering, and they handle that. They handle the traffic impact studies, anything to do with traffic and curb cuts run by engineering.
Okay.
And then I do believe that the ADA parking has to be on site. So that is one thing that I can attest to as well.
Okay. It seems like the way we've looked at this is for all intents and purposes, this site is contiguous based on that there's this alley that does not exist. I mean, that does not exist anywhere but on paper, correct?
Right. It does not seem to be paved from the image I'm looking at. So it's basically non-existent.
Okay. All right. Very good. Any other questions of staff? or the opposition? All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Oh, yeah, go ahead. If you'll state your name, too.
It's Joy Doss. It's Joy
Okay,
Doss.
thank you, Joy.
I had a question. I'm not sure. I guess it goes to Ms. Smith about the traffic plan. Did we talk about that before? I heard traffic plan mentioning that, and I don't remember if there was one or if it's required. Well, the opposition says it is, but.
Well, that's generally something engineering, let me pull up the staff report. Engineering provides comments on most cases that is going to require their review. One of their boilerplate comments is generally that an impact study will have to be done, or let's see. Yeah, they didn't really speak to that, but so they have to do, and Josh can help me, Director Whitehead can, but they have to do some kind of analysis. In-depth traffic study will be required. It's not always going to be required. And I'm sure that depends on the scale and the size of the use. But that's generally with engineering, not with our department.
And so that would, sorry to interrupt, that would occur after this. Is that correct?
Correct.
If required. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions, Ms. Doss?
No, thank you.
Okay. And anyone else on the board have any questions?
I do. This is a Madeline Savage Town. On the contiguous site, was that just our determination based on evidence from the last hearing that there was no, that the alleyway was presumptively on a paper kind of matter versus an actual? Was that a determination we made, or was that already decided?
Mr. Chairman, Josh Whitehead.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
We did speak to that in February. This is a subdivision that was developed as kind of a resort community in the early 20th century called Lakeview. And this is a demonstration on why Tennessee was one of the early states that adopted a platting statute. In other words, rather than people just recording their plats with the local register of deeds, they would have to go through the city or the county government and eventually the planning commission before they could record their plat, because this developer recorded a plat that contained a whole grid of streets and alleys. And I would say maybe about 60% of the streets and 0% of the alleys were ever built. So yes, these are all paper alleys.
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure that it was like a decision made or something already recorded that these were not actual alleyways.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any other questions?
Did we have any discussion about, this is Joy again, Doss. Did we have any other discussion about the disabled parking? I also heard something about ADA statute. So did we have just refresh my memory, I may have forgotten, but did we have a conversation about disabled parking or moving disabled parking closer to the building? Should we have a conversation?
I don't know about that. The issue, it tends to be looks to me to be a very technical one, because if you look at where the disabled parking is, it's about, I'd say, 13 feet from the entrance those disabled people would go in. So you can't get much closer than that. The problem the problem comes that, well, there's an alley in between that's not been built, but it's really, the disabled parking's right on the back of the church if you consider it contiguous as that alley not existing.
Okay.
So I don't know if we talked about the actual ADA of that. I would think that that's not really our problem. That could be a problem for the owner if for some reason someone was able to succeed in ADA suit on that. Would you agree with that, Mr. Whitehead? Does that make sense?
That they could pursue in federal court, well, an action of that nature?
Some sort of opposition, could on an ADA requirement based on the technicality of the law, but I don't think that affects what we're doing here.
I do agree with that last statement, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Okay, thank you, Joy. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, we're going to move to the applicant at this point. The applicant has 12 minutes since they reserved their time prior to this. So, Josh, let me know when they're on the line.
Yes, they are on the
We're
line.
on the line.
Okay, very good. We've already sworn y'all in, so you can go ahead and start.
Okay, I think that Mr. Carlos Ortiz, the building engineer, did a great job of explaining everything that he felt that we needed to have. However, a lot of the things that he's saying that we need, we haven't even gotten to that part yet. Right now, we're just trying to get the variance so that we can move forward with that part. Far as going in and doing any of the building work and any of that, when he mentioned Class D misdemeanor, we've discussed putting the fence up and the things that we wanted to do at the last hearing, but we have not attempted to do any of that because we're waiting on the official permit to proceed with that. So even with that, for as he's talking about the handicap parking and all of that, we are aware of things that we have to get done in order to meet code standards, but we haven't gotten to that yet. So we're waiting on the official permit, which was the next step after we had the hearing, the last hearing, so that we could move to getting some of the other things that we needed to get done. For as filing all the other stuff, we were told that this was the first step that we had to do when we filed for the permit. So that's why we're doing this one first, and then we'll proceed with everything else that we need to get done in order to fulfill what needs to be done. He mentioned on the last hearing, which he was not there, that the capacity was 300 people. We never said that this is what we plan on doing. They asked the question about how many could they hold. We're not looking to get 300 pews or 300 seats to try to put 300 people in there. We explained that the congregation is a small-sized congregation. Even if the congregation grew, we're still not looking to put that many people in there. So this is something that we have already looked into. So we are planning ahead even for future. The other thing he mentioned was the traffic impact study and the traffic control plan. You have 4 other churches right in that same percentage that utilize that same street, Shelby Drive. It will be no more traffic for us than it is for them, which they already exist and have been in existence since 1979. This church was, they started building this church in 2002 with the intention of having this as a church. It would have been completed. The only reason that it did not get completed is because they ran into a financial issue. So the same thing that he's saying that we are dealing with right now, some of this they dealt with back then or they did not deal with back then. We purchased this building, paid our money for this building, and it's been almost a year. And we have not been able to utilize it or go any further where we're still paying on this building. So with us, we're trying to move forward so that we won't be wasting money. That's
okay.
it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? All right, hearing none, I assume you guys are ready to get this case to where we can discuss. So if I could get a motion to approve, because we always vote in the affirmative, or we always give our motions in the affirmative, BOA 19-132.
Motion.
And as conditioned by the staff, just so we have that on the record.
Second.
So moved.
Okay, take that as a move and second. Is there any discussion at this point?
This is Ms. Doss. I hear everyone's argument, and I am glad that I have a better understanding of the situation in terms of what our actual purview is. I think the applicant makes a good point that there are 4 other churches in the vicinity, and I was thinking about the churches in my residential neighborhood as well, and other residential neighborhoods as well. And I honestly don't know how they handle, traffic or whatever, but I think this is something that could be worked out as it was conditioned by staff. And if there are checks and balances, if there are checkpoints. Or I don't now remember if we did a sunset. I think we did a sunset as well. Is that correct? Did we put a sunset clause
As
in
a
there?
condition,
Yeah. Before, to check back on the progress and make sure that the conditions are being adhered to so that the neighbors can be happy, the applicant.
I don't believe there was any sort of, there's no condition as to a sunset. Are you wanting there to be a condition as to a sunset?
Do we think that'll be helpful? I mean, the neighbors won't be happy, but they'll be sort of happy-ish if there's, if there are conditions that address the concerns. And then the applicant is able to move forward. I mean, it really is valid to do for the churches nearby.
Yeah.
Although all these situations is different.
This is Miss Savagetown, Madeline Savagetown. My thing with it is we have enough to meet oversight between Office of Planning and Development and Engineering, because obviously they all have to come back, whether they require a traffic survey or anything like that. I think there will be enough oversight in the process to help them stay within the realms of the UDC and what's allowed in their licensing and permits. So I don't think a sunset is needed or necessary, because I think there are enough regulations and oversight that will go on in this process that should help them.
Okay, I agree with that.
I do too. That tracks.
Okay, other comments at this point? Hearing none, I assume that you are ready to vote. Mr. Whitehead, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Doss?
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Ms. Scarlock?
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Towns?
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and would not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
Mr. Melandri?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
7 ayes.
All right, so we have approved BOA 19-132 as conditioned by staff. Thank y'all very much. Mr. Secretary, will you call our next case we're going to hear?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That brings us to agenda item number 3, which is docket BOA 2019 County, located at 8130 Shake Rag Road. The applicant is the Shelby County government. The use district is the R6 Residential Single Family District, and the request is a use variance from section 252 to allow a communications tower.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ms. Smith, would you like to give us a staff report on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Summer Smith with the Office of Planning and Development. As Mr. Whitehead just stated, this is a use variance to allow a lattice tower of 220 feet in height for emergency services, for an emergency service facility in the residential single-family zoning district. The existing land use is vacant land used for a debris landfill by the Shelby County government. The tract is currently being used and occupied as a public landfill for debris and yard waste. The subject property is within the proximity to single-family homes to the west side of Shake Rag Road, with homes on a state tract in the CA zoning district. A site plan and elevation plan have been submitted to illustrate the height and dimensions of the tower at 220 feet in height and a 80 by 80 compound area relative to size and area of the entire tract of land. The property has direct access to Shake Rag Road via a private drive with a gate and chain link fence along the public roadway. The request for a lattice tower would be an acceptable land use because the current condition of the property would not be suitable for single-family homes. The existing land use of the site does not warrant the land use as permitted by right in the zoning code. If you look on page 8 of the staff report, you'll see the findings of fact. Pursuant to section 9.2.6A1 of the UDC, the subject property exhibits exceptional situations which limits the use of the property and the use is permitted on the property. The use is permitted on the property due to either the unusual characteristics found in to apply in section 9.22.61. This area does not apply to the Memphis 3.0 plan because it is in unincorporated Shelby County. So with that being said, the Office of Planning and Development recommends approval with conditions. I want to draw your attention to condition 1, which states that there shall be a minimum of a minimum setback of 200 feet from the public right-of-way of Shake Rag Road. The 200 feet was determined because we normally recommend that any collapse zone should equal the height of the tower. And then condition number 2, the fence, including materials and height, shall be illustrated on the plans and shall include 1 row of evergreen shrub B, either needlepoint, boxleaf, or brilliant holly, installed around the perimeter fencing and base of the tower compound. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smith. Are there any questions for Ms. Smith at this time?
I have a question, Mary Baker.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Baker.
My question to Ms. Smith is, how far away is the nearest home to this tower? You may have covered that, and I just missed it.
No, I did not cover that. Josh, you know off the top of your head?
Let's come back around to that question, and we'll have an answer.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions of staff before we move to the applicant?
My question was similar to Ms. Baker's. Was the nearest home, and then was there another tower, or what is the closest, or is there a close tower within the vicinity?
Do we know of any other towers close by?
There is a map on page, I don't have a page number here, but it's included in your staff report right after the application. So maybe around page 20, it was submitted by the applicant, and it shows the radio towers in Shelby County. So there is one, if I had to guesstimate, I would say about 2 miles west. It's called Lock
I see that.
ASR.
Okay.
And those particular towers. Say that again, Ms. Smith.
Page 2 has a map as well of tower locations of the staff report.
Okay. All right, I'm scrolling up to that. Right. Yeah, and those are the same type of tower. Like there could be other towers. This is just for the, this is a Shelby County emergency tower, correct?
Correct. And if you want to come back to me after we hear some of the other testimony, I'll have the answer with regard to the home and the answer on the other towers. They mostly require special use permits, so we can at least see where the other special use permits in this vicinity are, and that would give us a good idea of where the other cell towers are.
Hey, Josh.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Carson, go ahead.
This is Carson. I just measured it on Google Earth. It looks like it's 500 and almost 15 feet to the closest house across Shake Rag Road.
Okay, thank you.
along with those questions about close towers, I'm looking at page 6 of the staff report. And there's a photograph of the subject property, and there's some sort of tower or smokestack of some sort. Do we know what that is, Ms. Smith?
It's not listed in the staff report.
Yeah.
Sam, it looks like they're abandoned on Google Earth. It looks like they're abandoned by the street view.
Okay.
But they do look like
Makes sense.
former smokestacks of some kind.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Any other questions of staff before we move on to the applicant?
Can I ask one other question? I think I know the answer to this.
Yeah, Ms. Baker, go ahead.
Will there be a light at the top of this tower? I'm pretty sure there will be because it's over 200 feet. Is that correct?
I think maybe the applicant can answer some of these questions.
Okay.
It might get a more accurate response
Okay.
that way.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Baker. And was there someone else that was wanting to say something as well?
This is Joy Doss. Is there legally a legally prescribed number of feet or yards or whatever that this tower has to be from residential homes or other buildings?
The Unified Development Code states that towers need to be the base of the tower needs to be at least 150 feet from the nearest dwelling as measured from the base of the tower to the footprint of the single-family dwelling. They are designed to collapse into themselves versus fall over straight.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, any other questions? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to our applicant. And so, Mr. Whitehead, do we have Ms. Bodie on the line?
Yes, sir.
Or Mr. Brassfield?
Ms. Bodie.
Okay. All right, Ms. Bodie, would you
Yes.
like to add anything to what staff has? You have 10 minutes, and then, of course, you can reserve time of that.
Yes, sir, I'd like to address a couple of things. The first one being, we would like to offer a friendly amendment to condition 1 for the 200-foot setback. We would like to have the site plan approved as submitted that shows the current location of the tower to the right-of-way of 131 feet. Based on the requirements of the Land Development Code for communication facilities, the setback is the underlying district setback, which in this case is 20 feet, plus 1 foot for every 3 feet in height over 100 feet. So therefore, we do meet that, because if you used it at the full 220, that'd be 120 feet over 100 feet, so that'd be 40 feet plus the additional 20 feet, so that'd be 60 feet. So we would just request that it be approved as submitted. Second thing, this is a communication facility for Shelby County Public Communications Network. And then thirdly, I believe I heard a question about a light. Yes, due to the height, FAA does require the tower to be lit. And at this point, I'll just reserve my time for any questions or anything at the end.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bodie. And is staff okay with this friendly amendment of the minimum requirement for the setback?
Staff was just gonna defer to whatever the board felt was the correct setback.
Can I clarify that statement? Yes, we are fine with that proposed condition. I've rephrased it to read a use variance to allow a lattice tower, keep up the current language, and at the end of the word setback, shall be permitted and setback as shown on the submitted site plan, and then return to the language in the staff report from the public right-of-way of Shake Rag Road.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Are there any questions of the applicant that she did not address at this time? All right, Hearing none, we're gonna move, and Ms. Savage Towns, how much time did we reserve on this?
I'm looking. Hold on, sorry, I had to flip over.
You're fine.
He has, 8 minutes.
So 8 minutes left, and so that would be a total of 10 minutes to rebut. Okay, we'll move on to the opposition at this point. And looks like we have a neutral person and then someone in opposition. Who do we need to go to first on this, Mr. Whitehead?
I don't believe we have the neutral person that was listed, so we can go straight to Mr. Smith, Mr. Jesse Smith.
Mr. Smith. Okay. Mr. Smith, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, could you give your name and address for the record for us, sir?
Yes. Jesse Smith, 8125 Shake Rag Road, Millington, Tennessee, 38053.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'm going to swear you in now. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead. You have 10 minutes, sir.
All righty. I don't have a big argument set up like Mr. Ortiz did moments ago, but I just wanted to voice my opinion.
You're fine. No worries there.
I just wanted to voice my opinion. I am the sole resident directly across the street at 8125, directly across the street, and we just inherited this land from my father. Recently died a couple of years ago, and we're in the midst of doing a remodel on the home. I just wanted to voice my opinion. I've already got the smokestacks over there. That's like I guess like a Millington landmark around there. It's the old World War II powder plant where they had the smokestacks over there. That's our little thing that we have. That everybody knows about there. I just didn't want to see a lattice tower built over there just to kind of ruin the eye line for anything like that. And I guess that's really all I had to say. I just kind of opposed to seeing that built. I guess that's about it for today.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions for Mr. Smith at this time?
I do have a question. What are your
Okay.
I just have a small question. What are your plans with the property that you have across the street?
I'm sorry, one more time.
What are your plans for the property that you have that's directly across the street?
Okay, I see. We have inherited a 2-bedroom house, and we're in the midst of hiring a contractor to just tell us whether or not we can build onto that house or to bulldoze it and start over. We just had our first child, so we're just looking to raise and start our family out there. That's family. It's property that's been the family for about 75 years. So we're just looking to keep it that way.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith? All right. Hearing none, we're going to move back to the applicant. And the applicant has reserved a total of 10 minutes if you need it, Ms. Bodie. Would you like to say anything or address any other concerns?
Just to reiterate, this site will be used for public safety and communication, so we are looking to enhance public safety in that area for not only Mr. Smith, but all the residents in that area. And I'd be happy to address any other questions or concerns that members of the board or staff may have of me.
Does the board have any questions for Ms. Bodie at this time? Hearing none, I assume you guys are ready to discuss on this. So can we get a motion? Sorry, I'm moving my screen around trying to find the motion to approve BOA 20-19 as conditioned by staff, including the friendly amendment.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, being moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I was able to do the quick research. The closest cell tower is about 8,000 feet to the northeast on Quito Road.
Okay, so a mile and a quarter, roughly a mile and a third. Any other comments from the board or staff? All right, thank you, Ms. Secretary. If you will do a roll call vote for us.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Towns.
Yes, I find that the standards of UDC at 9.22.6 are being met will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
Ms. Doss,
Yes.
Mr. Malazri,
Yes.
Ms. Scurlock,
Yes.
and Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
7 ayes.
All right, you've been approved. I want to thank both the applicant and the opposition for coming down and congratulate the opposition on his new child. It's tough to argue much against public safety like this, but we appreciate you coming down and participating with us today. With that, Mr. Secretary, will you call the next case?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is agenda item number 7, which is docket BOA 2023, located at 1609 to 1613 Monroe. The applicant is Union Avalon Partners, LLC. The use district is the RU4 multifamily district within the Midtown overlay, and the request is a use variance from 252 to allow the legitimization of an existing commercial parking lot. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the body wishes a staff report or the applicant's report. The applicant is on the line, but this was requested to be pulled by a member of the board, so we may want to go to her first.
I was thinking the same thing. I think what we might do, since we already have the staff report, is let Ms. Savage Towns add what she'd like to, and then if we need to hear a report after that, we can.
Okay.
So I will defer to Ms. Savage Towns at this time.
I just wanted to just basically hear, I guess, from the applicant, their approval of the conditions, just kind of know what was going on and how they get to the point of us having to legitimize the parking lot.
Okay, that makes sense. So why don't we, Ms. Reeves, is she where she can talk yet, Josh?
I believe so.
Yes. He just
Okay.
just unmuted me. This is Cindy Reed,
Okay.
5909 Chubby Oaks Drive, Suite 200.
All right, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, if you want to address that question.
I will. We're real excited about a major renovation of this shopping center. And the existing parking lot, I think, has been there. I think I had that in my letter of intent. It's been there for a really, really long time. I went back to some of the Google Earth views to see when the commercial center started using it. And as soon as that commercial center, there used to be homes along Union Avenue. Mm-hmm. And when they took the homes out and put the shopping center in, I think that's whenever they started using that parking lot, those two lots for parking. And so we're doing a major renovation of the shop front and the retail center, and we just want to continue the parking where it has currently been, so that there is adequate parking for the new shopping center.
Okay.
And then you're adding just like those 8 spots where there used to be grass, like it wasn't symmetrical before. It had parking on one side and only half parking on the other, and now it'll just be like full parking. Is that right, Ms. Reeves?
That's correct, and it will be improved. It previously
Sure.
it has not been maintained for a long time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Gotcha.
Are there any other questions at this point for Ms. Reeves?
Yes, Mary Baker. I have a couple of questions, Cindy.
Okay.
My first question is, I'm trying to picture this. I was trying to picture it when I was looking at the staff report. What's in that building fronting Union? That'll tell me which.
There was a picture that they took. Hold on a minute. I'll tell you what page that was on.
It was the
Tan and go, Cindy.
fast signs.
On page 11 of the staff report.
Oh, fast signs? Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I know where this is. I have one other question. Are you adding any
Okay, please.
landscape?
Yes, ma'am. We will be adding landscaping.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, Cindy, unless you have anything you want to add, we can go ahead and move on, if that's okay with you.
Yes, sir, that would be wonderful.
Okay, then if somebody can give us a motion to approve BOA 20-23 as conditioned by staff.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
being moved and seconded, is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Whitehead, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Gerlach,
Yes.
Mr. Malazri,
Yes.
Ms. Doss,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Jones.
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we have 7 ayes.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, and the case has been approved. Mr. Whitehead, will you call our next case?
That brings us to agenda item number 14, docket number BOA 2030, located at 3619 Kearney. The applicant is WOSFR LLC, represented by Cameron Ellis and represented further by Tim McCaskill, who's on the line. The use district is the R6 Residential Single Family District, and the request is a variance from section 361 to allow a reduction of the minimum lot and width size. And I think, Mr. Chairman, similar to the previous case,
Like
Ms.
last,
Baker had a question.
All right, then what we'll do the same thing we did before, Mary. So we're going to turn it over to you and then decide if we need to hear a further staff report.
Okay. Actually, I don't have questions, I don't think, just comments on this application. And I'm making the comments for the record. I am planning to vote for this application because I'm sympathetic with the applicant who filed this application, and he understood that this is the correct process. However, I still want to make the point, clearly, I hope, that I believe this process is improper and the application should not be on our agenda. And I think we've had one of these cases in the past, and I made a comment on it at that time, but for the same reason, went on and voted for it. And so I'm going to explain this very briefly why I feel so strongly this way. This request is to reduce the width and size for 2 lots that do not exist. I underline that, do not exist. The plan for these lots, the plan is for these lots to be created later through a 2-lot subdivision approval by the Land Use Control Board. Reduction in the required lot width and size is equal to a rezoning of the property to another single-family zoning district, which allows creation of lots of this size and width through a subdivision. The authority to rezone property lies with the Memphis City Council with advice from the Land Use Control Board. We, I don't believe, have that authority. The Board of Adjustment authority is limited. We can provide relief to an owner of an existing lot. Again, I underline that, existing lot, by allowing specific encroachments into the required setbacks set by the existing zoning of the property. And again, as you all know, even to do that, we have to make a finding at least of practical difficulty based on a physical condition of the site. And of course, this type of finding cannot be made here because these lots don't exist yet. So that's my comment on this. I hope you will have heard it and will take it to heart. And I just appeal to the staff to think about whether or not these kinds of applications should be sent for rezoning or maybe even a plan development in the future. So that's my comment. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms.
That's all.
Baker. Mr. Whitehead, do you have any sort of response to why we've done it this way as opposed to going just solely through the LUCD?
The code allows you to request variances, lot-related or otherwise, through either the Board of Adjustment plus the Land Use Control Board with the subdivision. So variance plus subdivision equals plan development. So you can either do those separately, do the variance and subdivision, or you can do them as a combined application as a plan development. I've done some research on this very specific subject, and it appears this body has at least reviewed, sometimes rejected, sometimes approved, but there have been variance lot size and lot width variances submitted to this body going back several decades. So I did not see it as precedent setting as Ms. Baker.
Okay, all right. I'll ask one more question just for my edification. So, I mean, you're basically saying, like, I guess when you do a PD, you get to kind of pick and choose and do all sorts of stuff. And, you know, contrary somewhat to what the actual zoning says, and just like we've done, you know, you do with the variances. Does that make sense? Am I thinking about that somewhat rightly?
Yes.
Okay. And yeah, I guess, yeah, both ways make sense to me. So duly noted, Ms. Baker, appreciate the comment there. Are there any other comments on this? Or does anyone want to actually hear more about this staff report and case? All right, hearing none, I assume y'all are ready to vote on a motion. So, Mr. Whitehead, do I need to see if the applicant wants to speak?
Let me unmute him.
Yes.
Tim McCaskill, I think you're with us now, correct?
Mr. McCaskill, do you have any comments, or are you ready for us to just vote?
He's unmuted.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything to add to this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCaskill. With that, I'm going to see if someone from the board would give us a motion to approve BOA 20-30 as conditioned by staff.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All right, being moved and second, is there any discussion at this point? Hearing none, Mr. Whitehead, could you give us a roll call vote, please?
Vice Chair Savage Towns.
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
Mr. Claybrook.
Yes.
Mr. Malazri.
Yes.
Ms. Baker.
Yes.
Ms. Doss.
Yes.
Ms. Scarlock.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
7 ayes.
All right, you have been approved, Mr. McCaskill. Thank you for coming down, or joining us today, rather. Mr. Whitehead, will you call our last case?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That brings us to agenda item number 15, our final case on the public hearing side of the ledger. That's docket BOA 2032, located at 4599 Mill Branch. The applicant is Motessem Ateum. The use district is the CMU 3 Commercial Mixed Use District, and the variances are related to shipping containers being used as accessory structures and as fencing.
Okay, thank you very much. And I believe I heard at one point that the applicant was wanting to request a hold.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and she is on the line now.
Ms. Reeves, you've already been sworn in. Is that accurate to say you're requesting a 30-day hold?
Yes, sir. With the way that we want time to work with staff and with the fire department and see if there's anything that we can do in order to not put my client out of business. If he's got to find another creative way in order to store his tires and stay in compliance with the tire permits, the yearly inspections, and the certificate of compliance with tires. So he thought that this was a good way to do it, and evidently it's not. But it did meet all the criteria that he needed to meet in order for his certificate of compliance, because they want to make sure that your tires are kept dry and away from theft. And this was his way of keeping them dry and keeping people from breaking in and stealing them. So he's going to have to, we're going to have to try and come up with something else in order to not put him out of business. We hope that's not the reason for this. So we would appreciate the 30-day hold.
Okay, very good. Is anybody on, is there any questions of the board of the applicant right now? All right, hearing none. Mr. Whitehead, could you get Ms. Nelson on the line for us?
I don't think she's on the line.
Okay, so she was the only person I showed in opposition, so I just wanted to get their opinion before we voted on this. So if she's not with us, I assume that, hearing no comments before, let's, if somebody could give a motion to hold BOA, let me get it pulled up, sorry. BOA 20-32. And that hold will be for 30 days. Being moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, here in a second, since this is a hold, we'll just do a voice vote. Well, is there any discussion? Hearing none, we're going to do a voice vote. So all those in favor of holding for 30 days, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion for a hold passes. Thank you very much, Ms. Reeves. And then Mr. Whitehead, do you have any further announcements for us today?
No, sir. Tuesday is a deadline, so is the deadline for the May meeting. So y'all will be getting a notification from me Wednesday on the predicted size of your docket next month.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everybody, for your participation today. I know this is a little unusual and a little bit tougher than we normally have it, but I think everybody did really well and had a good meeting today. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.